So, what makes a building more than just bricks and mortar? What's the secret sauce that turns a regular property into a landmark that people really remember? In this explainer, we're going to dive into the story of one developer, Govianu, to see how they think about creating spaces that are truly built to last.
It really is a great question. It gets to the heart of the difference between just, putting up a structure and creating architecture that leaves a real legacy. We're talking about the gap between a building that just works and one that becomes a core part of a city's identity. So what does it take to make that happen?
Well, for the real estate developer Govianu, the answer begins with one powerful idea: a vision. Not just to build, but to actively shape how our cities are going to look and feel in the future. So let's break down what that really means and see if it holds the key. All right, so first, let's look at the why. What's the fundamental vision that's driving their whole approach to development? It's a great place to start because it helps us understand if their strategy is actually any different from the thousands of other developers out there.
Okay, so their mission statement uses this word redefine. Now look, that could just be some corporate buzzword, right? But it could also mean they're trying to do more than just build your standard apartment block. It suggests they're really rethinking what a modern space can be, maybe through smart tech, sustainable materials, or community features that are a cut above the rest. And their long-term vision, well, that takes it a step further. They go from talking about individual buildings to transforming urban landscapes. Now, that is a pretty big jump in ambition. It suggests a strategy that thinks about more than just the piece of land they're on, but how a project might affect the whole neighborhood, the streets, the local shops, the whole vibe of the community. But of course, a vision is just words on a page without a solid plan. So how does a developer take these big, lofty goals and turn them into actual physical buildings? Let's dig into the how, their game plan, and the core principles that guide all their work. So their journey kicks off back in 2010 with the founder, Mahesh Govianu. And you can see a clear progression here. They first established themselves in Bangalore, and then by 2015, they deliberately started expanding their reach in the region. This points to a really strategic plan that helped build their reputation for quality, which they seem to have really locked in by 2020. These principles are basically the bedrock of how they operate. And in an industry where, let's be honest, trust can be a really big issue, things like unwavering transparency and ethical practices are huge differentiators. Then you've got the nuts and bolts, superior engineering, and customer centricity, which makes sure the final product is actually something people want to live and work in. And this slide really shows you how that vision becomes a reality. It's a clear pipeline, right? It all starts with the sales team figuring out what customers actually need. That info then goes to finance and legal to make sure the project is solid and above board. Only then does the execution team actually start building. This kind of integrated process is so important for making sure that original vision doesn't get lost in translation. Okay, so we've seen the vision, and we've seen the process. Now for the what, the actual results. What does all this planning and all of these principles look like when the rubber hits the road?
The scale of what they've done is, well, it's significant. They've delivered over 1 million square feet of real estate. Now, to put that number in perspective, that's roughly the size of a 50-story skyscraper, or about 2,000 average-sized apartments. That's a major contribution to the places people live and work.
And they're definitely not slowing down. They've already got another 1 million square feet in the works, which means they're on track to basically double their footprint in the next few years. That's what you call an aggressive growth pipeline. And if you look at their portfolio, you can see a really smart, diversified strategy. With almost half in residential, they're obviously a big player in the housing market. But having big chunks in commercial and hospitality lets them adapt to market changes and contribute to different parts of city life, not just where people live, but also where they work and where they travel. Their footprint also goes beyond just the big tech hub of Bangalore. They're developing in growing cities like Mysore and Tumkur, and even in tourist destinations like Chikmagalur. This shows a strategy that's targeting both the big established markets and the up-and-coming ones in the region.
So after looking at their vision, their process, and their projects, let's circle all the way back to our original question. What does this story tell us about what it really takes to build a landmark?
Ultimately, the takeaway here seems to be that creating a landmark isn't just about one flashy design. It's the end result of a consistent vision, a principled process, and a long-term strategy that's focused on making the whole urban environment better, not just plopping a building down in the middle of it.
And that leaves us with a really critical question for the future, doesn't it? As our city's needs for things like sustainability, community, and technology keep evolving, the responsibility is on developers to not just build more, but to build smarter. The real test of any landmark is whether it can adapt to whatever comes next.
It's a complex challenge for sure, and the future of our cities is going to be shaped by the answers that developers come up with. If you're curious and want to see more examples of Govianu's work, you can explore their projects on their website. And that's it for this explainer. Thanks for joining us.